Hey guys, welcome to part 6 of What If Naruto was a Sensory-Nin and became the head of Root. If you enjoy the video then like, share and subscribe and also comment your thoughts as it inspires me to make more such videos, and remember to check out my playlist section for other interesting stories. So let's get started. Chapter 20. Sai took a breath and schooled his features. He shouldn't be nervous. He was prepared for a private meeting with Konoha-sama. He was proud of his work and Shin assured him he was doing exemplary. He'd been informed that his 50-page report may have been excessive, so he had trimmed the fat of it to a more reasonable 37 pages. He had prepared arguments to defend his adjustments to his original mission objectives. All that preparation aside, he was nervous, which frustrated him. Emotions. He opened the door and stepped inside. Good day, Konoha-sama. Hello. Sai took a step back as Konoha-sama grinned widely at him with an outstretched hand. Ah yes. A handshake. He took his superior's hand and was not surprised at the steel behind the young boy's grip. Konoha-sama was the best of them after all. Hello. I am ready for my report. He waited and watched as Konoha looked in his eyes and seemed to be processing something. He was surprised that the moment he got anxious he had done something wrong. Konoha wildly waved his hands in the air. Oh no. Sorry you haven't done anything wrong. Come, sit down. Sai's anxiety only deepened as he began to grasp what was happening. Konoha winced as Sai started putting pieces together. Sai remained silent though, keeping his thoughts to himself. Sorry. Sai, right, yes. You can change it if you wish. No, that's fine. Your name is yours, I don't want to change it. You may if you feel you have a better one. Sai watched curiously as Konoha seemed to take a deep breath before he calmed down and relaxed. It appears Sai wasn't the only one feeling anxious in this meeting. I didn't mean to worry you today, I wanted to hear straight from you about your mission. How's Sasuke been doing? Has he taken well to the academy? Sai set down his report and slid it forward. Konoha took it but seemed to be giving Sai another piercing look. The same look when he sensed his anxiety when he entered the office. A small frown settled on the blonde's face. You're training him. Ah, not just him, Konoha-sama. And Hinata Hyuga. How did this come about? Konoha seemed perturbed and started to page through his report as he waited for Sai's response. Sasuke Uchiha keeps his fellow classmates at arm's lengths and doesn't open up to even his instructors. He is vulnerable only with his mother and barely with his psychiatric therapist. After a few weeks of observation I believed he would only open up more to someone he believed he could use to gain strength or accelerated training. And so you chose to break cover and train him. I've revealed no affiliation for any organization. I've offered no reason or explanation for my developed abilities. Yet, he knows or is under the assumption that you are clearly above being an academy student. How was Hinata dragged into this as well? She originally began as my cover and main source of intelligence on the rest of their classmates. Easily manipulated with minimal offerings of positive reinforcement. Originally, she showed little promise as a shinobi. No inner strength. Weak-willed. As Sai thought back to the moment his opinion changed of the Hyuga, Konoha froze and looked him in the eye. She remembered me. She idolizes you, sir. The idea of you was the one topic that revealed an inner strength. Her determination. I figured should her abilities be brought to acceptable levels, her loyalty to you would give her a better foundation as a recruit than even the Uchiha. Sai. I have no interest in recruiting either Sasuke Uchiha or Hinata Hyuga into Root. Konoha set the report down and Sai realized with a start that he had read the whole thing in the short span of their conversation so far. He then processed what he had just been told. Then, why was I instructed to observe the Uchiha so closely? If not to strengthen their possible recruitment. First of all, you were sent to observe Sasuke Uchiha and no one else. Konoha rested a hand on the report and tapped it somewhat agitatedly. The contents of this report would have every major clan in Konoha up in arms with how detailed your observations of their future heirs are. Sir, I apologize. I have failed, and I accept. He stopped as Konoha interrupted his report with an errant wave. This report will never see the light of day, but what's done is done. No one knows your part of Root or of our involvement, right? Sai knew in that moment that the truth would come out and decided to simply speak it aloud before his failure could be sensed from him. I've encouraged Sasuke Uchiha's obedience through alluding to grant him an audience with you should he make favorable progress. Whatever reaction he thought was coming, he wasn't ready for when Konoha groaned and slammed his face into his desk. Does Hinata know? No, sir. Sai fidgeted as his leader spoke with his face flat on the desk. She strives to impress only me. Sasuke was defiant to my commands when we were one-on-one. With the addition of Hinata, someone else he can watch flourishing under my guidance, his disobedience to me has shifted to outcompeting her. Measuring her growth against Sasuke gives her the confidence to push her boundaries in a private setting, though, there has been an incident. Tell me. She has shown a display of her explosive growth in the academy in a spar against him where she won. After not receiving an immediate response, Sai quickly began to assuage any worries from his superior, but it led to little more than a brief investigation. Both of their parents got involved and I was brought in and sat down with them, Instructor Yumino, and Makoto Uchiha and Hiyashi Hyuga. And how'd the meeting go? They followed their training and kept to the story. All three of us take turns sneaking into the Shinobi library, stealing more advanced training manuals and engaging on them together. It was so rehearsed that I believe the only one to not be completely fooled was the Hyuga patriarch. He raised no complaints as I suspect he didn't wish to undermine his daughter's surprising growth in strength. How hard have you pushed them? They could be capable genin in a year. What? Sai tensed as a red flash came across Konoha's eyes. Whispers had circulated about their new leader's secret power. Of the scars across both Agent Fu and Agent Torun's necks. The two wore them as marks of pride. Konoha winced again and Sai saw genuine regret and discomfort wash across his leader's face. He hadn't known just how emotional their new leader was. It was surprising. I'm sorry, I snapped just then. But that is unacceptable. Find a way to step down their training. I want them to have as much a normal academy track as they can have. They will not be pleased. The Uchiha may lose trust in me should I de-escalate the training too extremely. Tell him that if he wants to ever meet with me, I expect him to stick it out in the academy. Push them to hide their abilities as much as they can. Spin it as if it's additional training during the school day. Teach them restraint. As you command. Do you like the academy? Sai froze this time. He was prepared to speak on any sentence in his 37-page report, but nowhere inside his debriefing did he speak on his own personal feelings on the academy. He wasn't prepared for the question at all. Yes. I find the lessons rudimentary and tedious, but I see how necessary they are for the growth as the class as a whole. I enjoy spending time with the Hyuga and Uchiha. Very well. Good job. Continue as you are, but remember what I've said. Of course, Naruto-sama. Dismissed. Hinata frowned as she noted her father glancing down at her from where they were standing. Ever since she had beaten Sasuke in that spar one time, almost everyone had been treating her differently. After the interrogation between her, Sasuke, and Sai, her father had taken her straight home and tried to have her spar him. She fought like how she used to and lost within the first minute, and he had become furious. Do you think me a fool, Hinata? And no, I just. She watched, horrified, as he raised a hand and activated the caged bird seal. Her cousin Neji and her uncle Hizashi fell to the floor from where they had been observing and yelled in pain. Do not hold back from me. He barked. She stared at him as tears fell from her eyes. As the last shred of belief in her father as a good man crumbled. He was cruel. She had to stop him. He just kept the activated seal going. Rag. She yelled as she dashed forwards with a jab. He glided back from her as the seal continued to cause her family agony. Don't hurt them. Stop it. Is this the only way to motivate you? He stepped into her guard with a palm thrust that would have left her sobbing all night half a year ago. This time, she slid underneath it and slapped his wrist, cutting off his tenketsu and thereby stopping the agony coursing through her cousin and uncle. Don't hurt them. I will fight you, so stop. I'm tired of you bullying everyone. Just because I can fight, I won't become cruel like you. She scowled at him as she felt her anger finally answering her call and giving her strength. She had never thought she'd be able to use it against her father before, but now, she was happy that at least he might finally take her seriously. Hinata-chan. She slowly looked over to see her uncle strained, smiling at her. It's okay. We are fine. That was a wonderful demonstration of your ability. Wouldn't you say, Hiyashi? She slowly looked back to her father and she could see a deep rage behind his eyes. Was that what he used when he fought? His anger. Was she like him? Before she could spend any more time thinking about it, he nodded stiffly and turned around. Come, Hinata. Me and you have some training to do more, privately. She felt her heart sink but took a step to follow. And another. At least the rest of her family would be safe if they didn't have to be there. Why yes. To-san. So now. Oh ho ho. Now she was just so lucky that whenever she came home from after school, her father wanted to now spar. Which meant that after she trained with Sasuke and Sai after training all day at school she was training again. Apparently, Sasuke was going through something similar with his mom, but more about having more frequent family time. Hinata sourly wished her dad wanted to bake cookies or something like Sasuke's mom wanted him to do. He came off like such a big baby and having to spend family time with his loving mother. Sai's response was to dial back their training, which neither of them had been happy about. He'd hear nothing about it though and was rather evasive about his reasoning. Then again, Sai was always something of an enigma. She glanced across the street from where the Hyuga clan was standing at parade rest to see the last of the Uchiha clan lined up for the parade as well. Their total numbers really were but a fraction of the might they had been able to present only but a few years ago. She saw Sasuke standing beside his mother in their traditional uniforms. All the clans were present for the parade today. It wasn't very often that the fire daimyo came to the village himself. All clans were sure to be present to show their strength and their fealty. No matter which clan was strongest, they all valued the business of the daimyo equally fervently. The Hyuga and what was left of the Uchiha both had the privilege of being placed nearest the Hokage's platform at the base of the Hokage tower. She anxiously waited for the daimyo's procession to reach them. She could hear applause begin to make its way through the village and the celebration began to take off. She just sent glares at Sasuke, who she could see was just smirking at her. He had found great enjoyment in how she had messed up. He had begun to tease her and it was absolutely infuriating. Not to mention how the rest of her classmates had tried to swarm her with questions and accusations. She hadn't had a whole conversation with any of them, spending every moment not actually in class hiding from the rest of her classmates. It was so embarrassing. A roar of shouts and instruments sounded off from the nearest bend and the royal palanquin turned the corner. The daimyo sat on the middle of it, waving slowly with a warm smile on his face. She bowed as he passed and she watched Sasuke stiffly do the same across the street. The palanquin sat down at the base of the platform and she watched as the sandaime appeared on the platform. He bowed his head in greeting and the daimyo rose from his seat and nodded his head at the gesture. But while everyone else watched their Hokage and daimyo make a public declaration of friendship and unity, she only had eyes for a young man who stood off to the side of the platform in the ceremonial garb of the Sarutobi. Her hero, Naruto Uzumaki. She hadn't seen him since that day she had thanked him all those years ago. But she knew it was him the moment she saw him. She wondered why he wasn't in the academy. He seemed to be about her age. His eyes drifted and caught her gaze. As she felt fear that she'd been caught staring for some reason that she could not explain. He winked at her. Her face burned and with no warning at all her vision swam and she nearly fainted. Hinata. Control yourself. Why yes. Sorry. She anxiously glanced back up at the dais but he was gone. She saw him walking alongside the Hokage and fire daimyo into the tower and felt her face burn up in abject horror. How embarrassing. Hiruzen pointedly left Naruto standing in the corner of the room as he sat down with the fire daimyo. The less amount of focus the boy could pull the better. Oda Hideyoshi was no fool and Hiruzen wasn't either. He could harbor one or two guesses as to the purpose of this visit, and if he was to bet on them he knew even his student Tsunade wouldn't take those bets. I am pleased that you've taken such an interest in our village, Daimyo Dono. You honor us with your presence. I'm sure the other Kage will be hosting their own daimyos in their villages soon just to not lose face from the graciousness of your attention. Easy. Hiruzen. Sometimes you spout more honey than even the shadiest of my advisors. Both men grinned as they sat. His anxiety aside, he found some enjoyment out of the more traditional meetings his role dictated he attend. It truly was an honor to be the one to host the ruler of their land and analyze his true intentions. Oda seemed to enjoy the game of it all more than anyone else he knew though. I'm glad that mix-up with Onoki Dono was resolved without further bloodshed. I am also pleased that you pulled your forces out of Kurigakure when you did, Hokage Dono. It is the latest opinion of our court that we limit our involvement in any current internal strife throughout the other great and lesser villages. Hiruzen nodded. Of course. Though, our eyes must be open for if any of those internal struggles have any sides that are more favorable to our great nation, I'm sure. Oda took a sip of his tea and a delicate bite of a pastry. He chewed slowly and seemed to savor the flavor before carefully swallowing. Only then did he respond, just not as publicly as the great Konohagakure has been as of late. You speak of the massacre of Shadow Valley. A regrettable incident, but necessary to stall the mobilization of Iwagakure and their alliance with Kumogakure. Not just the massacre, Hokage Dono. The winner of the Kurigakure civil war was determined due to Konohan influence. True. Is there any other event that you worry may poorly reflect your great court? Hiruzen was glad he asked as an uncharacteristically serious look bloomed on Oda's face. There are certain loud whispers about Jinchuriki, Hokage Dono. Hiruzen could sense Naruto tense and he was sure that Oda was perceptive enough to see it happen. Jinchuriki. Interesting. Ours, you mean, or another nation's? You may as well come sit down, boy. Hiruzen watched Naruto freeze at the command and looked to him for confirmation. With a subtle nod the boy came over and sat before them both and bowed his head to the floor. You've been busy for once a young. What power does the great beast give you from its prison? Oda Dono. He spoke before Naruto could respond in any way. It seems that the tailed beasts are not the mindless demons they've been painted as. Naruto-kun has a friendly relationship with the fox. They are on a first-name basis, as it were. Oh ho ho ho. His attention was now focused squarely on the Uzumaki and Hiruzen knew he'd been right from the start. There had never been a chance at avoiding this. Would you tell your daimyo the fox's name? Naruto's eyes flickered to meet his eyes before looking back and he was proud of the control the 8-year-old exhibited over his tongue. With a nearly silent breath the boy looked Oda in the eyes and shook his head, but, you may ask him for his name, if you wish. What a careful rejection, my dear boy. Quite political of you. Oda bowed his head with a grin, Kyuubi no Kitsune. My name is Oda Hideyoshi and I humbly ask for the privilege of knowing your name. Your vessel has shown great loyalty to my country and I would greatly appreciate the chance to honor him and your contribution through him. Hiruzen waited with bated breath as he could see the telltale signs of Naruto and Kurama deep in conversation behind the boy's blue eyes. He thanks you for your request. He expresses that he recognizes no leader of any land but appreciates your humility. He wants you to know that he is called Kurama. Hiruzen winced, even though that was better than what Kurama could have responded with. He had found the fox had a fickle temperament and could only be reliably expected to be agreeable with Naruto. At least Oda seemed to be taking it well, just laughing in response. I have to thank you, Naruto-kun. I never believed that I would hold a conversation with the Kyuubi a day in my life. You are quite remarkable. Extremely remarkable, Daimyo Dono. Naruto is the incarnation of the will of fire itself. I know he will make all of us quite proud. You haven't spoken so highly of a student of yours in a long time, Hokage Dono. I am glad I came. I had a request to make. A hole opened up in the pit of his stomach as he felt history about to repeat itself. There was nothing he could do to stop it. And what would that be, Daimyo Dono? Oda turned back to face Naruto, and Hiruzen could see steel determination in the boy's eyes. Of course, he already knew what was about to be asked of him. The boy probably knew the moment that Oda came within his range. What a terrible burden Kurama's gift could be. How would you like to join the 12 Shinobi Guardians, Naruto-kun? I simply won't take no for an answer. With your assistance and presence, I am sure that great things could be done for the betterment of all of the Land of Fire. How long would you want his tenure to be, Daimyo Dono? I think a single decade is what I'd need. After that, who knows, he may just be ready for your retirement, Hiruzen Dono. No. A silence grew in the room and he could see the fear in Naruto's eyes. A daimyo was not one to be denied. You've never once, in all the decades we've worked together, refused me so plainly, Hiruzen. Oda spoke calmly, but Hiruzen knew better. This was a man who was used to getting his way his entire life. Hiruzen couldn't find it in him to care. 5 years is the maximum amount of time that Konoha can suffer the absence of one of its greatest shinobi. Oda paused and Naruto slightly relaxed. Good. The boy was acting as a barometer for the negotiation, and Hiruzen knew concretely that he was on the right path. 5 years. Why such a clean compromise? Half the time of my request. In 5 years, a number of clan heirs are to graduate from the academy and become genin. I need him to return in order to take on a genin team. This seems entirely too coincidental, Hiruzen Dono. I feel like the boy's talents would be wasted teaching mere genin. One of my greatest acts as Hokage was teaching a team. Without my mentoring we may never have gained the strength of the Sannin. There's no telling what we could lose. Besides, you've said it yourself. It's clear the boy's future lies in being the Hokage. Having a team will create more ties to fellow shinobi of the Leaf. It will cement him as the legacy of the Hokages of the past. The Nadaime was my mentor. My student was the boy's sensei. I've trained Naruto as if he was my own son. 5 years is all I can offer you, Oda Dono. Neither of them were oblivious to the silent tears streaming down the boy's face at his words. Though he wished he could wrap him up in his arms right now and tell him he meant every word, he had to remain strong. This wasn't over yet. Does that sound agreeable to you, Naruto-kun? Serving as a guardian for 5 years. Oda calculatedly turned his focus to the boy. Why yes. Yes, Daimyo Dono. Though, am I allowed to make a request? I will hear it. I would humbly ask to be permitted to travel the elemental nations a month or 2 out of each year. You offer a great honor and opportunity, and I think a little time to travel and see more of the world and understand both our allies and enemies a little better would be a great boon to my career as a shinobi of the Leaf and warrior of the Land of Fire. Hiruzen felt pride blossom in his chest at the request. A brilliant move. Very well. I expect you to accompany me back to the capital at the end of the week, my boy. Hiruzen, I'm tired. I wish to return to my chambers. Oda got up and walked out without another word, his samurai guard opening the door before he could even near it. The fire daimyo was definitely not pleased with being denied. But, Hiruzen couldn't find it in him to care. Another of his sons to be whisked away to the capital. This one didn't even desire it. I'm sorry. He wrapped up the boy in an embrace in an instant and held him tight. Do not apologize. Do not. I am so proud of you, my son. He pulled back and looked at the young Uzumaki, his shoulders in his hands. It was true. He held the boy as closely in his heart as Asuma. Or Konohamaru. I've never had a better student. You've revitalized my spirit, my boy. Bolstered my own faith in the will of fire. My heart pangs to lose you, but I implore you to take charge of your time in the 12 Guardians. Open yourself to the opportunities that come your way. Carry yourself with pride and come back to us. You will be sorely missed. I'm going to miss you. The boy sobbed as he held on as tightly as he could. Hiruzen's heart broke even more. How much did the boy need to give in the name of his village? He'd already given so much. I remember the day I took you from the orphanage. When I knew you wouldn't have a normal childhood. You sensed it immediately. You've known for so long that the trials you face and have faced would not be placed on the shoulders of those many times your age. And you never once complained. I am sorry, Naruto. Your bravery is unparalleled. You will make an inspiring Hokage, and I can't wait for the day I pass my hat to you. He kissed the boy on his forehead and smiled warmly at him as tears flooded past his own eyes. I love you. I love you too. Kakashi sighed for probably the 5th time that evening, and Naruto followed suit. He wasn't excited, but then again neither was Naruto. Yet, there was nothing either of them could do. It wouldn't be that long. But, it'd feel like forever. Any jutsu you wanna learn before you head on out? Nah, more interested in just spending time together. So they did. They sat on the edge of the outer wall just looking in towards the village. Watching as the civilians and shinobi went about their work. Watching the busied chaos slowly settle down as the sun began to set. I don't think I'm ready for this, Kakashi-ni. He rested his hand on his little brother's head and tousled his hair. Be one of the 12 shinobi guardians. Please. You've fought through the Kiri Civil War. These next few years will go by so fast. You know I won't forget to write you every few weeks anyways. Pakun always enjoys an excuse to spend an afternoon with you. His heart grew lighter as the boy giggled like an 8-year-old should. It wasn't right, wasn't fair. Then again, Not a lot about being a shinobi was. The boy was strong and he'd be fine. Kakashi was honestly more worried how he'd deal without being able to keep a subtle eye on him. Perhaps it'd be good for them both. Let the boy some room to really grow on his own. Would you make me a promise? He glanced down at the boy and nodded his head. Anything. What do you need? Could you watch out for everyone here while I'm gone? Like my friends. Ha. Of course that's what you'd ask. I promise, Naruto, that I'll make sure nothing happens to anyone you care about here. You won't have to worry while you're away. I promise to keep them all safe. Quote. Thanks, Kakashi. The boy slowly leaned into his side and hugged him, and Kakashi was just relieved he wasn't the one who had to initiate the contact. 5 years without Naruto. He'd miss him just as much as Obito or Rin. Just as much as Minato sensei. Just as much as his father. He started to cry and he realized it may have been the first time he'd done so in nearly 8 years. I promise. Kurenai gasped as Anko knocked the wind from her lungs with a sucker punch. She fell to her knees and forced herself to control her breathing through the overwhelming instinct to gasp. With a groan she stood back on her feet and flung her sweaty hair out of her face. Good job, Nai-chan. Only a few seconds to bounce back that time. Go ahead, your turn, Yurik. Kurenai took a more than appropriate amount of satisfaction from the way her own punch sent Anko to her knees. Neither of them felt comfortable enough with anyone else to train their combat reflexes or endurance like they were, but it was definitely a bit twisted. Kurenai winced as she wound a bandage around her knuckles as Anko spat out some blood and grabbed her water bottle. Something on your mind, Nai-chan. You're a little more on board than you usually are. I'm stressed. Jonin exams are coming up and we need to have a better showing this time around. Anko was giving her a disbelieving look and Kurenai sighed. She had been consumed with nothing but the thoughts of her fickle heart. Of the conflicting feelings she had for both Anko and Asuma. The fear of hurting either one of them. There were so many other more important things to focus on. Rising tensions with the other villages. The Jonin exam. Naruto leaving for the fire capital. Come on. That's been enough of a break, Anko. Nah. Tell me what's up. Great. Now Anko was in one of her stubborn moods, maybe she could try to talk about it. I've been thinking. Wow. Nai-chan. Proud of you. About Asuma. Oh. What? About him. She missed how Anko seemed to bite her lip in fear for that brief pause and only caught the concerned look that was sent her way after Anko had finished her question. I like him. But I just get confused, and Kurenai. She felt Anko rest a hand on her shoulder but was scared to look her in the eye. Her heart danced whenever her full name left Anko's lips. Anko spoke tenderly before she worked up the courage to continue her confession. He's a good man. He looks out for you and lifts you up. I'm jealous he's a better pick than most of the other shinobi around. Yeah, you're right. I'm lucky. She missed the pained look on Anko's face, but looked up in time to dodge a right hook for her jaw. Eyes up. Yuhi. You won't make Jonin that distracted. Oh, it's on Mitarashi. Itachi panted and wiped the blood leaking from his eyes. The black flames of Amaterasu dissipated upon his command, but Itachi was frustrated. I've followed the instructions, why won't this work? He read from the stone tablet. He'd followed his instincts. He'd even listened to some of Madara's advice. Use your hate, Itachi-kun. Sure. Right. The problem was that the only thing he had any real, true hate for, was himself. The terrible things he'd done for peace. For what? Relations between the villages had never been tenser. They were just as bad as they were right before the start of the Third Shinobi War. He'd killed his father and most of his clan. He'd almost killed his own mother. He had irreparably scarred his younger brother and broken the heart of his student and adopted brother. And he had nothing to show for it. Rag. He once more tried to channel his anger and frustration into both of his eyes at once and once again. Nothing. He could summon the black flames. He could use false reality. Why could he not summon it? He'd given everything to this cursed world. What else would the shinobi system take from him? In a moment his anger deepened and his self-hatred faded away as he finally touched upon the one thing Itachi Uchiha hated above all else. The cause of it all. The shinobi system. The villages and cages squabbling and throwing lives against each other in a mad rush for supremacy. Gold. Jutsu. Land. Children were bargaining chips. Assets. Targets. Innocent. Fucking children. From his core, his hatred burned stronger than any anger he'd ever allowed himself to feel before. And as a snarl tore itself past his lips, his eyes burned. Crimson chakra exploded from around him, forming bones, tissue, and then armor. He'd finally done it. Unleashed Susanoo. Kabuto hurriedly wrote down his notes as Naruto provided orders to Fu and Torun. They hadn't had much time since the Fire Daimyo's command and had spent every evening making plan after plan, contingency after contingency. Agent Snake is in command in my absence. He is my voice. Torun, I place you in charge of training and mission delegation. Fu, I want you to advise Agent Snake on intel and updates from our forces on any Jinchuriki business. Yes, sir. As you command, Konoha Dono. Dismissed, spread the word. They left and Kabuto couldn't stop himself from pausing and just watching Naruto lead. The boy was a genuine natural at it. His prepubescent voice carried confidence and compassion. It was amazing how far the boy had grown in only 3.5 years. He thought back to their meeting all those years ago and couldn't help but grin at the realization that he may have just been right to bet on Naruto. This may have been the best decision he'd ever made. Careful, Kabuto, I can sense you get distracted when that big void opens up in you. That'd be pride, Naruto-kun. You continually impress me every day. You've taken this wrench into our plans very well. Using a clone as a liaison every 3 weeks should be plenty of communication. Using summons in dire emergency or getting into contact with Agent Menma even more so, this'll work. It's not a mistake. You already know I don't think so. But, to speak it aloud. He grinned as Naruto rolled his eyes but continued anyways, with your gifts being in the capital will reveal a treasure trove of information for all of our projects, I'm sure. Understanding how to negotiate and manipulate Lord Oda itself will be indispensable when you take on the mantle of Hokage alone. Not to mention all the other foreign dignitaries or business people you will be introduced to. I'll lose out on training with you, Kakashi, or Hiruzen Gigi though. And all my friends. The others, I feel like I'm abandoning everything I've worked so hard for. Kabuto kneeled in front of his leader and rested a hand on his shoulder. You're doing nothing of the sort. You can't refuse the Fire Daimyo. Not yet. You have to do this. Besides, I'll check in on you every now and then. Kabuto. You better promise not to be too risky. Only if you promise the same. He smirked and Naruto pouted. I promise. Now, it's your turn. I promise not to be too risky in regard to how often I visit you. Kabuto. Fine, I promise to be careful. Okay. Now, come on. I want those other jutsus you were telling me about, so start writing them down. I'll have a lot to do when I'm there. I don't want to waste a single second. Hiruzen stood atop the Hokage Tower and watched the royal procession make its way out of the village as his citizens celebrated their daimyo. His heart was heavy, but it needed to be done. The village needed Oda's unwavering support now more than ever. Perhaps, in hindsight, he had been overzealous. Had overreached. Either way, it was too late to double back now. Konoha had shown the other nations it meant business now, and slowing down would be suicide. He looked back to Kakashi and Shikaku on either side of him, watching Agent Konoha, Naruto Uzumaki, leave the village and called for their attention. Kakashi, we can't waste much time. We need to double our operational agents within the year. Kakashi nodded, but Shikaku frowned in thought and stepped forward to intercede. Sir, perhaps we should. Shikaku, we'll speak on your reservations later. For now, I want you to double recruitment of Jonin and push our current crop harder. I want our average Jonin at A rank, and by the gods, I want as many Anbu at S rank as we can get. Shikaku glowered at the interruption and gave a brief nod. There'll be no backing down from this, Hokage-sama. No, there won't be. Write me up a report of mitigations we can take for our increased mobilization. Raikage Dono will use every single Chunin promoted as fodder in his war to back out of our treaty. As you wish. With that, the Nara gave a stiff bow and left. Kakashi waited as they watched the last of the procession leave the village gates before he spoke. Honoring Naruto's departure with a silent vigil until he was gone. I looked into it. You were right. Danzo has fled the village. He's the least of our worries anymore. Things are bad, Kakashi. Very bad. I feel age settle deeper in my bones every day. It's hard to imagine me still in this seat 5 years in the future. Quote. You will have my unwavering support, Hokage-sama. He nodded his head at that. He would need it. We need to be ready for Naruto's return. We need contingencies for all of our allies and our enemies. For those that fall in between. Let them come. Let them all come and find what we have prepared for them all. At your command, Hokage-sama. Go. Let us ready our knives for those that wish to test our will of fire. Sai clapped his hands once and Sasuke and Hinata stopped their tree-walking exercise and sat down before him. They were both quick and respectful. It was nice. So, I have a choice for you both. He could see a wariness in Sasuke's eyes, but Hinata just listened with rapt attention. You both have 5 years to impress me, 5 years before I re-evaluate if you are worth both my tutelage and my friendship. What are you talking about? Sasuke nearly shouted as he balled his fists. You said that you could help me get strong enough. The Uchiha glanced over at Hinata before catching his slip, but did manage to cover for it, to achieve my ends. Now there's a time limit. Sai-kun, it is kind of, out of the blue. I understand your feelings. Control them. In 5 years we will graduate the academy. The truth of the matter is that you will have been ready to graduate for 2 years before that. Then why wait? Itachi graduated. Alone. And in the midst of a war. Tell me, Sasuke, are we at war? He took satisfaction in how Sasuke looked like he swallowed something with the viscosity of mud. It wouldn't do to wait too long though. Even Hinata could get worried if he paused too long. Your class is full of clan heirs. They will all graduate at once. The team leaders for your genin cells will be expected to be of a certain caliber. It would be best for us to wait to guarantee the odds of some of us 3, if not all 3 of us, ending up on the same genin cell. So why you plan to play the system? He smiled widely at the Hyuga heiress and nodded. Indeed. I aim to do exactly that, Hinata-chan. We will need to exhibit more control at the academy, no more mishaps like the sparring incident. Tell her to know when to take a loss then. Or why you could stop being such a big. Enough. Sai ordered and they obeyed. He stood and he took pride that he had their full attention now. If we can pull this off, there's no telling how strong we can grow. It will be hard, frustrating, isolating. We will only achieve this if we are utterly determined to succeed. If you have any doubts or hesitations, leave now. They both remained sitting. He smiled. Good. Let's get to work then. 5 years later, a boy of 13 walked down the dirt road and slowly came before the gates of Konoha, the village hidden in the leaves. He wore an orange jumpsuit, a leaf Hittite, and a sash denoting him as one of the 12 guardian shinobi. He was Naruto Uzumaki, Agent Konoha, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune and best friend of Kurama. And he was home. Welcome home, Kurama. Home's overrated. Chapter 21. Naruto laughed as he leapt across the rooftops of the village. The exhilaration of finally being home was unreal. He hadn't felt this good since before he'd left. 5 years. I've missed home so much, Kurama. Yeah, might wanna reel it in, you're spooking the patrols. He blinked as he realized he was indeed spooking an Anbu patrol and laughed and waved at them. Sorry. No emergency, just excited to be home. They continued on their way and Naruto just chuckled in embarrassment. He was home. He gave a whoop as he leapt across the buildings and laughed in sheer delight. He was home and he wouldn't have to leave any time soon. Man, the past 5 years had been amazing, but it had felt like forever. Most of his time spent in Otodono's palace left him feeling super cooped up. His month-long travels always ended so early and he'd mainly only had clone memories of the village from when he'd send one out to Kabuto for updates. C1 always did his best to check in on everyone for him, but Naruto found that after extensively using shadow clones to train for years on end had started to affect him more. Their memories were easier to differentiate from his own, they felt pale. Like movies. It just wasn't the same. He landed on a rooftop and peered down at the academy. It seemed the batch of students training were sparring and there was Sasuke. His eyes shifted towards the bleachers and there was Sai watching over him. Good. He'd worried he'd be breaking his promise to Itachi to keep his younger brother safe, but it seemed he was able to do so perfectly from afar. He leapt up and away before even Sai could note his presence and headed to the Sarutobi complex. He peeked over the wall but didn't see anyone in the gardens. He went to the library and was shocked to see a new head librarian. It seemed the building had also been granted a hefty increase in funding as there was an entirely new wing and hundreds of people quietly milled about reading books. If you aren't able to do anything else for them, at least you manipulated your villagers to enjoy being literate. Oh, hush. I didn't force them to want to read. No, I'm sure the hundreds of generic-looking clones milling about in the library every day for years on end did absolutely nothing to make it seen as a popular local venue. Naruto pouted and leapt away. There was one last place he wanted to stop by before he inevitably had to check in with the Sandame. His stomach grumbled loudly as soon as he got closer to his destination. Ichiraku Ramen. Is that Naruto? Haha. Welcome in. Chuki grinned and walked around the counter to give him a hug. It's been too long. What? Naruto. Ayame stuck her head out from the back and gave him a wide grin. Welcome back. It is you, oh boy. Right. I'll get you your own pot of miso ramen going right now. It's so good to see you again. Naruto laughed happily as he hugged the chef back. The Ichirakus were good people and he really had missed them and their food while he was gone. It was so nice to be back. He sat down on a stool as Chuki started working on his food. His grin widened even more as he sensed someone appear down the street and head into the stall from behind him. He didn't give them a moment to announce their presence before he jumped off his seat and leapt into them with his arms outstretched. Kakashi ni. Haha. Naruto. Though he had grown a few inches in the 5 years he'd been gone, Kakashi still effortlessly picked him up and swung him around in circle before setting him back down. Naruto beamed up at him and was secretly glad that it seemed that he hadn't changed at all. Well, except for the fact that he felt much stronger. It seems he hadn't been the only one to train like crazy in the last 5 years. I thought you'd stop by here first. Mind if I share a meal with you before we head in to see Sarutobi Dono? Hell yes. Chuki. Double the order. It's time to see if we can still put your delicious ramen away like we used to. You got it. One Uzumaki Hatake ramen off deluxe coming up. Hinata panted as sweat dripped down her brow. Her form did not falter in the face of exhaustion. Her opponent did not falter either. His breathing stayed measured, but Hinata saw the trembling of his lungs through his ribcage. Saw the speed of his heart beating. Watched his chakra flowing with near-perfect control to reinforce his limbs. Saw him scowl at her activated dojutsu leveled in his direction. She smirked arrogantly in his exact same manner as his normal eyes glared at her. Sasuke Uchiha was starting to become insecure and sensitive about his lack of Sharingan. Hinata had found it to be an excellent button to press in their spars to push her advantage. Lately, they'd been stalemating more and more often. And match. Sai called just as she and Sasuke both breathed in to close the gap once more. They both immediately fell out of their stances and relaxed. Stalemate. Again. There was a point where she had been proud every time they tied since it meant that he hadn't beaten her. Now though, it was just frustrating that she couldn't ever win. They both stepped forward and shook as etiquette demanded even though their grips struggled to crush each other. Every single thing was a competition with the Uchiha. He was such an ass. Excellent. Your training has served you both well. Sai pocketed the timer he used to make sure they didn't run over the academy's lunch break. One time their bot had taken so long that when they returned Iruka had accused them of skipping class and called their parents. Sai found it imperative they never mess up like that again. They sat down as Sai threw them their lunches and they both wordlessly began to dig in as he cleared his throat for a debrief. They only had 5 minutes to eat and get to class after all. You're both ready. You've met my standards. All that's left is to take our graduation exams and then we'll be placed on our genin teams. Sasuke scoffed but Hinata rolled her eyes. The Uchiha had decided a few months ago he'd rather seek out Chunin advancement out the gate thinking he'd learned all he needed from Sai. Sai had offered to spar him no holds barred then and there. It was no contest. Hinata was just saddened at what Sai must have gone through in his life to have that strength so early. Still, it was nice to see Sasuke taken down a peg. Yes, Sasuke, we know your views on it. Now, ideally, we'll want all 3 to be on the same squad. Luckily, there are some variables that put that into our favor. Sasuke crossed his arms as he finished his food. Hinata paced herself out a little bit more conservatively than his gluttonous speed while eating, and smirked, because of Ino Shikacho. Sai smiled gently and nodded, Those clans are fond of pressuring the Hokage to set up teams with that formation in mind as often as possible. That leaves just 6 genin hopefuls, of which we take up 3 slots. Our odds are higher if the formation is kept together. Just 6. I'm sure more of our class will graduate. Hinata was sure that nearly all of her classmates would become genin in some capacity. At least, if what she'd overheard her father talking to the clan elders was to be believed. For the last few years the village had really been amping up their rosters of active shinobi. Sai just nodded. They will. But, the clan heirs are likely to be kept not only together but given a sharper focus in team placements and caliber of senseis. Which, if Ino, Shikamaru, and Choji are placed together, that would leave the 3 of us, Shino, Kiba, and Sakura. Luckily, there is also another dependable team selection we could utilize. To balance teams out and improve the bottom of the barrel candidates, they are usually placed with those who have scored the highest marks and those who excel but struggle in one area. Sasuke frowned. Like, top ranking, mid ranking, and bottom ranking. Indeed. We could leave our placements truly up to chance, or Hinata sighed, or we could try to manipulate the exams to ensure the best odds of success. Right on the money. So now who volunteers to be the dead last? Sai asked them and Sasuke just turned to her with a shit-eating grin. She frowned and crossed her arms. No. You can be last, Uchiha-san. It wouldn't be believable, Hinata-chan. I've already scored top marks our entire time in the academy. Sai-senpai has consistently hit the exact median score of our entire class. Hinata paled and whipped her head to Sai, who was grimacing for the first time she'd known him. He is correct, Hinata-san. For our plan to work, you will need to fail utterly. For the mission, of course. No. She moaned and fell onto her back as Sasuke laughed. Her father was going to be so upset. It will be worth it to all be on the same team, Hinata-san. We won't forget your sacrifice. Oh, I'll definitely never forget it. She hated how smug the Uchiha sounded. Fine. To be on a team with Sai, she'd do anything. It's not like failing would be hard anyways. For the mission. For their team. Agent Konoha. Reporting for duty, Hokage-sama. At ease, son. Hiruzen dismissed the rest of his Anbu guard with a quick burst of chakra, and Naruto smiled as he took of his mask. He seems older. Indeed, Hiruzen's wrinkles had only deepened and the rest of his hair had gone completely gray. Naruto sensed his chakra was still formidable, yet he sensed exhaustion and fear. His teacher knew it himself, he grew weaker with every day. Don't look so sad, my boy. The Sandaime walked around the desk and rested a hand on his shoulder. Naruto sensed the void of his pride grow as the old man looked him over. Otodono passed on nothing but high praise and adulation of your service these 5 years. You bring your village, your comrades, and myself much pride, Naruto. A true shinobi of the leaf. Thank you for all of your reports over the years. They were instrumental in this unprecedented time of progress and fortune. Thanks, I've missed you. The old man's eyes softened. I've missed you too, my son. He knelt down and hugged him, and Naruto held him tightly. This was the longest he'd been apart from his family his whole life. He was just happy to be home. He could tell that Hiruzen felt the exact same, the Sandaime's sadness a small drop compared to those other emotions that registered as gaps or holes in Naruto's senses. We'll have much to talk about in the coming weeks, but beside taking the time to welcome you back home, I also wanted to remind you of what was promised. Your latest responsibility. About that I don't think that I'm ready. And, Root needs my attention. Unfortunately, Naruto-kun, you've proved quite adept at running Root while occupied with other responsibilities these past 5 years. You can spare some clones to handle the day-to-day missions while you take on a genin team, and in emergencies where you are directly needed we can find someone to sub in for you in the interim. Why yes, Hokage-sama. Are you scared? Yes. He would admit it. He was scared and nervous. Anxious. Worried. They are children. I will be responsible for their well-being, and even I can't protect everyone all the time. True. You will most likely make mistakes. You may not be able to be there to save them when they need it. It will be up to you to make sure they have all the tools necessary to ensure they are competent on their own. I believe in you, Naruto. As you command, I just request I have some say as to who is on my team. Hiruzen laughed and nodded along. Very well, but we'll have to wait to see who graduates this year before we can discuss team placements. Their final exam is in 2 days. Take them off, ask around for advice, training genin. Do some light reading. Hiruzen's eyes sparkled with the light teasing, calling out Naruto already planned to read every book on teaching and education in the library in the next 2 days. Thank you, Gigi. Welcome home. Get some rest, I'm sure the next few years are going to be something special for you, ha ha ha. Naruto laughed along. But, that fear still sat at the bottom of his stomach. This is really gonna be a pain in the ass for my plans, Kurama. Biwuahaha. I can't wait to watch. Roshi grunted as the bandit's screams were cut off as they slipped under the surface of his magma. As he clenched his fist, the molten rock solidified and crusted over with a hiss. He sighed and cracked his neck as he looked at the rest of the bandits' camp behind him. Or what was left of it. Jagged shards of coral had torn the shoddy fortifications asunder, and even as he watched, they slowly shrunk as Yagura deemed the camp eradicated. He strolled across the bodies on the ground and found Yagura cursing under his breath as he tried to use some small water jutsu to wash the gore off of his silken robe. I keep telling you not to wear that fancy shit when we go on mission. It wouldn't be a problem if you'd stop throwing our opponents into the air when they are already in pieces. Yagura brandished a half-melted arm at him and Roshi pinched his nostrils shut. Ew. Will you put that down? It's your own fault. You are so fucking messy. Roshi rolled his eyes and cracked his neck. Whatever. Look, if we didn't just waste our time with these small fries then. You are the one who said we needed to keep a low profile. You pick the jobs. Pick a job a little more demanding then if you're just gonna use it as an excuse to be sloppy. My, we shouldn't be fighting so pettily, my friends. Roshi groaned as Menma the deranged Uchiha himself appeared between them out of nowhere. I told you not to pull that shunshin shit with us, Menma. Roshi grunted. I've nearly killed you too many times because of it. Well, it's good to keep you on your toes. How soon until they're here? Yagura asked waspishly. Menma and Roshi froze and looked at the short cage at the same time. He huffed. Every time you show up like this when we've finished a mission, it's because someone, he pointedly looked at Roshi, which was somewhat rude, got a little too loud or flashy and a nearby patrol is heading our way. Menma nodded along. But, what if this time it was just because I was so proud at how my 2 favorite subordinates expediently finished their mission? They're bandits. There were 2 genin among them. Roshi tersely said, it'd be embarrassing if we couldn't handle this in a single day. True. Very true. Perhaps Yagura is right and we should start offering our services to more higher paying clientele. We've got a good nest egg now. You've both been busy the last few years. Yagura growled and walked up to the masked leader of theirs and poked his chest abruptly. Firstly, you are our leader, only as cover and to be our face with clients, as you very well know. Secondly, don't agree with me as if you weren't also fully on Roshi's side about the level of mission we took as of yesterday. Thirdly, you could help out on these missions, you know. But then, who would let you know when stray patrols were coming? Roshi sighed at the question and took out a kunai. Before Yagura could yell any more obscenities or demands, a cry from the road interrupted them. Halt. By order of the Raikage, come out and surrender yourselves for questioning. Menma giggled. Oh good, they're here. I guess we'll have to stop working in Kumo for the foreseeable future. Roshi didn't reply as the enemy encircled them. Remember boys, we have a low profile. Menma said before he vanished. The fucker was too damn fast with that jutsu. Don't be so messy, Roshi. Fine, let's just wrap this up quick. Yeah. No witnesses. Their chakra flared and that was the only warning the Kumo-nin received that their end was nigh. Anko laughed as Kurenai attempted the genjutsu again with poor results. Come on, Nai-chan. You're a jonin of the leaf. You can do it. Kurenai snarled and once more attempted the genjutsu that would supposedly invert her opponent's vision, but Anko's sight didn't change. No, her view of her friend was normal as can be. Eyes narrowed in concentration. Biting her bottom lip in frustration. Muscles tense with anxiety. Her chakra flared and Anko's vision wobbled but quickly returned to normal. I think you're trying too hard. Shut up, Anko. Maybe you should just take a break before. A kunai came whizzing from the tree line aimed straight for her cheek and she flipped backwards, avoiding it immediately. Dozens more flew from all around them, but they were intercepted by 3 snakes with armored scales circling the 2 jonin. Anko found Kurenai immediately at her back and Anko grinned, asked Kasuma to give us some ambush training. No. Really. Anko frowned and scanned the tree line which had gone suspiciously quiet. Then what asshole is bothering us while we're trying to train? Two hands speared up from the ground beneath her feet and she was able to leap up just escaping their hold. Two more had sprung up beneath Kurenai and managed to grab hold but Anko quickly pulled Kurenai up against them as one of the snakes lashed out and bit into the arm, causing it to disappear in a cloud of smoke. Oh. Oh shit. Oh shit. Anko grinned widely. You fucking asshole. I'm gonna gut you. Shrimp. She heard Kurenai laugh beside her as dozens of clones dispersed in the tree line and a short, blonde kid walked up to them waving. Hey. Kurenai-chan. Anko-chan. Long time no see. Naruto. Kurenai shouted and ran to give him a hug. Anko was there in a moment giving him a noogie while within Kurenai's grasp. Trying to get one in on your two unsuspecting kahais, eh? Didn't you hear though? We're jonin' now. You're gonna have to deal with it, kiddo. Haha. Congratulations you two. Kakashi told me. He said you gave a great showing at the exams. A smug smirk that nearly made her blood boil spread across his face. He said it was almost as impressive as mine. You brat. She grinned and put him in a chokehold, tearing him from Kurenai's hold. Think that's any way to talk to your best friends. Haha. I missed you too, Anko-chan. Welcome home, Naruto-kun. Kurenai smiled softly and ruffled his hair. He smiled up at them and Anko saw a weight fall from his shoulders. A light started shining in his eyes. Thanks, Kurenai-chan. I'm so glad to be home. You know what this means, kid. Dango and story time. You gotta tell us everything. Fine, fine. Last one there pays. He shouted before darting off and Kurenai's form faded from view as the genjutsu she placed ran out of chakra leaving her the last one in the training field. Oh hell no. Get back here, squirt. Kabuto was finishing off some final reports in his office in the hospital when he heard a knock at his door. Turning he saw a young woman delivering an order of miso ramen. He smiled and seamlessly hid his excitement behind his mask. Paid for the meal and ate it. Savored the flavor. Grinned at the message. Finally. No more waiting. Naruto was home and wanted to hit the ground running. Kabuto had been summoned and he'd answer the call. He quickly filed his reports and locked up his small office and left. The people of Konoha milled about the walkways of the village completely oblivious to who walked amongst them. Agent Snake, interim leader of Root. Whilst in Agent Konoha's absence. Spy. Traitor. Defector. Defender. He adjusted his glasses and muted his presence as best he could while entering the secret entrance he'd had constructed near the hospital that led to Root's latest HQ. Isolated from the main complex, it offered just another layer of privacy and protection for the leadership of Root. Extra defense for Naruto's sake. He silently walked down the halls and donned the snake mask as he approached the doors to Naruto's office. Torun and Fu stood at attention on either side of the doorway, jagged scars shining on their necks. They both gave a nod as the door opened to admit him. He stepped inside. Before he could react, Naruto darted forward and hugged him tightly. He laughed as he patted the boy's back. Welcome home, Naruto-sama. Come on, Kabuto. It's just Naruto. As you command. Naruto-kun. He smirked as the boy laughed and sat on top of the desk. Like the new office. I had your personal effects taken here. It looks exactly like the old one. I figured you could choose to change it how you'd like yourself. The boy grinned at him and Kabuto smiled back. He then stepped forward with green glowing hands and the boy groaned as he began to administer a checkup right then and there. Really? You couldn't wait until we'd even finished saying hi first? We said hi. I haven't been able to give you your physical in 5 years. It's long overdue. I'm fine, Kabuto. Kurama kept his eye on things. Everything's normal. You've grown a mere 3.5 inches in that time. You're short for your age. Did he say that was expected? Naruto frowned, pouted, and crossed his arms. Seems the teenager was indeed insecure about his height. Kabuto filed that away with a smirk. It was always good to know how to tease the boy to lighten the mood at times. Yeah, the furball said that my life expectancy is an Uzumaki mixed with his genetic tampering made my transitional phases take longer than traditionally shorter-lived humans. Kabuto paused and looked the boy in the eye. Does he know how long your lifespan is? He has a guess. How long? The boy seemed to shrink in on himself. Kabuto waited with bated breath. It was entirely possible that the genetic tampering of the Kyuubi could have dramatically shortened the boy's life if he hadn't been careful. Some accident, something overlooked, shortening his Uzumaki average. Perhaps it could be mitigated. Perhaps if he started now, then he'd be able to fix whatever. 250. Give or take 50 years. Kabuto froze for perhaps the 5th time in his life. He could tell the boy needed some validation of some sort. Some form of comfort. Amazing. What? The boy seemed shocked and upset at his response, and Kabuto understood that excitement wasn't the reaction he'd been looking for, but this. Naruto-kun, even if you lost 50 years from that time frame, you'd have plenty of time to realize every single one of our plans. Even after I'm gone. That's marvelous. Not just you, Kabuto. After everyone is gone. Everyone I've ever known. Kabuto paused and blinked at the response. Ah, yes, he'd forgotten to view it through the child's perspective. An orphan would see nothing but loneliness on the horizon. As he once had. Well, that's a long time off, Naruto. No sense on missing out on the here and now. He smiled softly and held the boy's shoulder, especially when the odds of either of us making through the next 2 decades alone is miserably small. Promise to try to make it out the other side together. His words seemed to move something in the boy as he just smiled sadly back up at him and nodded, yeah. I promise. Very good. Now, did the Hokage insinuate that you'd still be expected to teach a genin team, or was that just a bluff to mitigate your tenure in the 12 Guardians? The boy groaned and flopped onto his back across the desk. No. He told me that I'll have a team within the week. Then we'll have to adjust our plans. Very well, have any questions? Yeah, how am I supposed to teach a genin team? I've read all the guides and teaching self-help books, but. I'm not teaching how to write an essay. Push them. The boy stilled and looked at him in confusion. What? Push them. Harder than others may think is wise. Why though? We're in peace. Our plans have a high likelihood of changing that, Naruto. Your team, whoever they may be, your students, will be your students. You have the opportunity to mold 3 shinobi to the highest echelons of caliber. You've been taught by the best our village has to offer. Push them hard. And treat them well. Kabuto sighed and took a breath before continuing. You know the worst this world has to offer those of us in this profession. Prepare them for it. Train them like how you were trained. Okay. Yeah, you might be right. Hey, I'm always right. Now, time to take some blood samples. Kabuto. Oh, sit still. Now, I'll probably be fine with just taking a liter. Here we are. Now, you may feel a slight itching sensation. Ow. He smirked. And he was glad his friend was finally home. Sai watched with bated breath as Sasuke was called up to the private room where the examinations were being held. They had just finished the final written exam and all that was left was the jutsu practical. The Academy 3, as it were. The Bunshin, Henge, and Kawarimi. In less than a minute Sasuke walked back out with a smirk and Sai knew his plans would work out. The 3 of them could have set a record for highest scores. That was how much faith Sai had in his students. With Sasuke easily placing highest in the class, Sai knowing he'd perfectly hit that 50% mark, the only worry left was Hinata not committing to failing miserably. A point over flunking out. He glanced over to where she sat. Her head was down and Sai could see a tear or two tearing up her eyes. He felt a pang of some foreign emotion at the sight. Her father would not be happy. Not at all. Failing would be much worse for her than embarrassing. Yet, Sai found no hesitation in her. She planned to make a spectacle of herself and was prepared to do so solely on his request. She glanced over and locked eyes with him. He stoically nodded to her. She nodded back and wiped her eyes. Shinobi made sacrifices. Hinata was about to make the first of her career. Sai felt proud, and he also felt what Shin had told him was most likely guilt. It was his least favorite emotion so far. Naruto took a sip of water and looked through the dossiers arranged on the Hokage's desk. The files showed the faces of every newly graduated genin. It was quite a crop this year. Unsurprisingly, every clan heir graduated. Surprisingly, one of them was the lowest score in the class. One which, Naruto knew, was anything but the dead last. What is Sai playing at? He thought as he looked at Hinata Hyuga's form. Something interesting, you, Naruto-kun. No, Gigi. Nothing. He set it down and looked up at his mentor. What are your thoughts? Haha. I'm more interested in what you're thinking right now, Naruto-kun. I'd like to train the Uchiha. He felt the turmoil rise in his teacher before the shadow of doubt flew across his face. As you no doubt feel, Naruto-kun, that does not fill me with confidence. I think you would do your best as his sensei, but I fear there is too much history there to be helpful to either of you. I made a promise to Itachi. To look out for him. Naruto grimaced as another storm in the Hokage's mood manifested. There is little we can do for Itachi anymore, Naruto. A promise is a promise. At least to me it is. Indeed. Yet another reason I have to veto the possibility. It is not your burden to train and protect young Sasuke at the expense and detriment of his potential teammates. A good sensei doesn't pick favorites, Naruto. Quote. Very well. Naruto frowned and threw the papers in his hands down onto the desk. There went all of his quickly made plans. Then unfortunately, I am at a loss. It seems that if I'm unable to teach Sasuke, then I'll be spearheading a recon team. An extraction team. Asuma would be better suited to teaching the Ino-Shika-Cho formation, and my skills in recon come from innate experience and ability, not through any particular study of my own. The Hokage paused and gave him a peculiar look. What makes you think I intend to uphold the Ino-Shika-Cho formation? Naruto blinked. Well, the village always does. Naruto narrowed his eyes and began to better sense the plan swimming in the Hokage's mind. But, you don't intend to this time. One of the clan heads requested an alternative. The Hokage gave him a deadpan stare and Naruto blinked in shock. The Yamanaka. Inoichi. He wants me to train his daughter. Quite fervently. I also concur with your self-assessment. You've clearly thought about a desired team underneath you. Which is why I intend to make team assignments more unorthodox this year. You're picking against conventions. Naruto bit his lip and leaned back. Some teams could fail if there's not enough cohesion. They're young shinobi of the leaf. Our village is known for teamwork and loyalty. If they're serious about their service, they should be able to work in tandem with any of their fellow classmates. So what? You're picking unbalanced squads. The Hokage grinned and Naruto got the sense that he was rather enjoying this. I'm presenting challenges to my newest Jonin instructors. Here's who I'm thinking for your subordinates. The Sandaime highlighted 3 names on the roster and Naruto blinked in complete surprise. Oh. Well, I see. Yes, I definitely wouldn't have anticipated this setup. Good. I can't wait to see what you make of them. Make me proud, my boy. I'll certainly try. The old man laughed at his apprehension. Do your best. That's all a sensei can do. Ino woke up with a start as her morning alarm went off. She slapped it off and leapt out of her bed. Today's the day. Genin team assignments. Score. She pumped a fist as she ran into the bathroom and started brushing her teeth and hopping side to side. No more lessons. No more homework. They are shinobi now. Her mind went to thoughts of being on a team with Sasuke and she let out a dreamy sigh. That would just be perfect. A total victory over Sakura. She sighed as she spat out her toothpaste. She knew what was more likely to happen. Shikamaru and Choji. Though in honesty, they were at least better than being stuck with Sai and Hinata. She growled as she thought of the stuck-up Hyuga. She hadn't forgotten that sparring match they had those years back. She never trusted the quiet girl again. She threw her clothes on, picked out her favorite outfit, loaded up her shinobi supplies, and lastly double-checked her makeup. Flawless. She'd easily be the prettiest kunoichi on her team. For sure. She ran out her room and down the stairs to the kitchen where she smelled breakfast cooking. Dad. Today's the day. Team placements. Exciting, kiddo. Why? I remember when I got my team. And, surprisingly, wound up with your 2 best friends. I know how it goes, Dad. She sighed and slumped in her seat a bit. Now that's most likely what's gonna happen for me. But Shikamaru is so lazy and Choji doesn't have an ounce of ambition in his work ethic. Worried that they won't take things seriously, Ino. Duh. She grumbled and ate a mouthful of food, and I won't have my team being the weakest of our class. So they'd better wise up to that quick. What if you're not on a team with them? Would that be okay with you? She was so anxious that she missed the unusual curiosity in her dad's tone. Dodd, as if I'm not gonna be stuck with those 2 jerks. She dramatically rolled her head back and groaned, but yeah, I'd be so happy if I wasn't with them. She rolled back upright and finished off her breakfast quicker than she'd let anybody but her parents see her eat. But, I gotta go. It's the first thing this morning. Love you, Dad. Love you. Have fun and good luck. She waved behind her as she hurried out the door and down the path to the road. She grinned and adjusted her Hittite and took to the rooftops. She was a genin now. She could avoid the roads the civilians and students were held to. It rocked. It was so much faster than walking. She laughed as she got closer and finally landed at the academy. There were notably more of her classmates on time this morning and early. It seemed she wasn't the only one nearly vibrating with excitement at today's event. She quickly made her way over to her friends and was surprised pleasantly to see Shikamaru and Choji had at least gotten early today for once. Hey guys. You all excited? Shikamaru groaned and Choji just grinned and gave her a thumbs up. Kiba howled alongside Akamaru and Shino shoved him as his hive hummed in agitation. Sakura smirked at her holding Sasuke's arm and the boy just winced and pinched the bridge of his nose. Sai just looked at her blankly and Hinata ignored her as she read whatever book she was reading. Hey, Sakura, get off him. She immediately shoved Kiba out of her way and latched onto Sasuke's other arm. You get off him. Would you, both, get off me? Sasuke asked them quietly. It's a bit much and I'm getting uncomfortable. She chuckled sheepishly and took a step back. Sorry, Sasuke-kun. Just excited. I hope we're on the same team. Me too, Sasuke-kun. Hopefully, you're all three on a team together. Then none of us would have to get headaches while the two of you bicker anymore. Ino jerked her head back and gaped at Hinata who just kept reading her book while Kiba howled with laughter at Hinata's comment. Even Choji was chuckling and Shikamaru smirked at her. Yeah, Hinata, maybe you're on to something there. HMPH. Well, at least I wouldn't have to be on a team with you. She snarled back at the girl. Hinata just glanced up from her book and then looked back down calmly. Ino felt her temper spike and her blood pressure rise. Before she could think of something else to say, she noticed that Iruka had walked out and opened the door. Come on in, graduates. It's time for team placements. Come on guys. Let's go. She shouted as she ran off to the door. Everyone filed in quickly and took the seats they were used to sitting in. The air was abuzz with nervous energy. This is what their entire time in the academy had been leading up to. Their genin teams. Their sensei and teammates that would be alongside them on their shinobi careers. Bonds that could last and thrive well into jonin promotions. The legendary Sannin had started off as a rookie genin team once. Anything was possible for them. Well, except if tradition had held. But maybe this year would be different. And she wouldn't be with Shikamaru or Choji. Or even if she was with one of them and Sasuke as the third, that'd be pretty nice too. That'd be okay. She grinned as Iruka walked to the podium with a list and a smile. Everyone, listen up. Before I get started, I just wanted to let you know, I'm proud of you. And you all should be proud of yourselves. It's an impressive achievement. Enjoy the labors of your hard work. That being said, this is only the beginning of your shinobi careers. The learning doesn't stop, the elite claim it never fully does. Never be afraid to try something new, and if you ever need to, I'm always here to talk. Even when you're chunin. He smiled and the class laughed. Iruka was known for being sentimental and funnily enough was also the most popular academy instructor. Now, I'm going to announce the teams. Your senseis will then come and pick you all up for an introduction. Once you leave, you are under their care and guidance. Don't disappoint them. Alright, I'll get on with it. Team 1 is. Ino sat through as patient as she could be as team after team was announced. Her name hadn't been called, but neither had Sasuke's or any of her friends, until. Next, Team 10. We have Kiba Inuzuka, Choji Akamichi, and Shino Aburame. Ino's heart stopped. Choji's name had been called and she wasn't on the same team. Next to her, Shikamaru stilled and looked up. She glanced over at Choji, who had frozen mid-bite of a snack. He glanced at them and fear shone in his eyes. What? She couldn't believe it, they weren't being placed in their clan's formation. She had the wherewithal to give Choji a warm smile and a thumbs up, and Shikamaru gave him one too. He smiled at them and finished his bite. Some part of her, the part that had hung out with the two boys nearly her whole life, was saddened. But her eyes widened. Could it mean? A slow grin came across her face and she glanced at the brooding Uchiha. Single quote dot dot dot. Oh my god. She might be on a team with Sasuke. With Sasuke. For years. This could be the start of their love story. It'd be so romantic. Ahahaha. Come on. Put me with him. She pumped a fist and held her breath as Iruka continued. The next team up, Team 8. Will have Shikamaru Nara, Sasuke Uchiha, and Ino Yamanak. Ino Yamanaka. Ino Yamanaka. Come on. Sigh. What? She and Sakura yelled at the same time. Iruka blinked up at them as did everyone else in the classroom, and they both immediately sank into their seats with their faces burning red. But then that meant that no way. Team 7 will be Hinata Hyuga. No. 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 Come on. This wasn't right. Sakura Haruno. And no. No. When she said she didn't want to be with Shikamaru and Choji, it wasn't supposed to be with Ino Yamanaka. Her face slammed onto the desk in front of her and she swore she'd make Shikamaru pay for snickering at her fate. Congratulations again. Just hang out in here until your senseis come and get you. Ino didn't move at all. Not as Team 10's sensei came and got them, or even not as Team 8's sensei collected them and Shikamaru quietly wished her luck. No, she didn't move until all the other teams had been called. And it was just her, Sakura, and Hinata waiting alone together in the empty classroom. Fuck. Sai froze as soon as the teams had been announced. Things had definitely not gone according to plan. What had he not accounted for? What was different this year that the Hokage had swayed so far from the norms? Was it merely that Agent Konoha was to be a Jonin sensei? He had clearly vastly miscalculated. By aiming for the Prodigy dead last team placement, he had inadvertently caused the three of them to be separated. He glanced over at Sasuke, who was smirking. Yes, his mission to look out for the boy would be easier than ever. But this was complicated. He'd have to be careful, much more careful maneuvering in front of a Jonin, unless there was still a chance that Konoha-sama would be their leader. Yes, he would hope. And Hinata. He glanced over at her and saw that her head was bowed. Her shoulders slightly shaking. The poor girl's anxiety would be skyrocketing right now. Their goal that they had worked for these past 5 years had been to be on the same team. To train together. Team 8. A voice called a woman's voice. He turned and saw his sensei waiting for them. Follow me. She had long, wavy, black hair and piercing red eyes. Sai identified her immediately. Kurenai Yuhi. Genjutsu mistress. Damn. He paused as he stood up. Asuma Sarutobi was leading Team 10 out the door ahead of them. Perhaps one of the three of them would be taught by Agent Konoha. He smiled softly. As he passed Hinata, he paused for a moment. Remember, we still have training on off days, Hinata-san. I hope to see you there. He felt pride surge as the girl took a breath, met his eyes, and nodded with determination, stealing her features. Right. I'll be there. Good luck, Hinata-san. You too, Sai-kun. She'd be okay. He may be worse off than her. Now he'd be stuck dealing with the Uchiha every day. For years. Hurry up, Genin. Let's go. Their new sensei called and walked out the door, and Sai rolled his eyes at the palpable annoyance on the Uchiha's face. Hinata was calming down from the initial panic at her team placement. It couldn't be any worse. Ino and Sakura. There went any hope of keeping pace with Sasuke and Sai. The girls were just gossips. Just mean. Already after nearly an hour of waiting on their sensei, and really, what respectable Jonin would make their new students wait an hour as a first impression, the two of them had finally scooted together and were whispering. As if they thought she couldn't pick up their comments. Bemoaning that neither of them were with Sasuke. Ino complaining she hadn't even been with Shikamaru, and Choji as if everybody hadn't known she'd been dreading that placement for months leading up to placements, and then Sakura complaining about her and Ino joining in. They were weak and mean. And they were her teammates. They were who she was supposed to trust implicitly and sacrifice everything for. As if they'd do the same for her. As the second hand ticked down to the last second of the hour, the door slowly opened and a kid walked in. A kid seemingly as old as them, if not shorter than them all. Blonde, spiky hair, a wide grin, whisker marks on each cheek, a Jonin vest over an orange jumpsuit. You're late. Wait. She heard Ino holler from her seat. What are you doing here? We're waiting for our sensei. You're in the wrong room, shrimp. Hinata's face paled as she realized who was standing before them. The Sarutobi Ward. Her hero. Naruto Uzumaki. Jonin Uzumaki. Their new sensei. My first impression of you all is, her vision grew faint and as hard as she fought she fainted. She missed the boy blinking in shock as her head hit the table. I honestly don't even know what to say. Wake her up and then meet me on the roof. Naruto groaned the entire way up to the roof from the room as Kurama just howled in laughter. He had his work cut out for him. They were awful. Ow. The moment he walked in he sensed their emotions hesitantly and was not impressed with what he felt. Pride, arrogance, distaste for each other, regret, disbelief at the sight of him. Unprofessional, unserious, and undisciplined children. Then again that's what they were. Children. Genin. Naruto took a deep breath, a very deep breath, and tried to relax. Had he really been so different once? Okay. He'd been vastly different, but that spoke more to him as an outlier than the three girls. They had a normal upbringing. Normal dreams. Normal fears. Normal socialization. Shrimp. Oh ho 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 ho. He'd get the Yamanaka back for underestimating him. No. He wouldn't start off being petty. That was no way for a sensei to behave. The door opened and he blinked as the three of them sullenly walked forward and took a seat far from each other. The pink-haired girl, Sakura, was moping and bored. The Yamanaka, Ino, was annoyed and agitated at being stuck with the two girls and his eye twitched at her burning disapproval of him as sensei, and the Hyuga heiress, Hinata, was awash with embarrassment at fainting in front of him. Alright, now that we're all here. Time for introductions. Let's hear your name, what you excel in, what you struggle with, and what your dream is. Any volunteers? Nobody raised a hand or took the initiative and Kurama started laughing again. Great. Like pulling teeth it seemed. Okay. Great. I'll just pick. Blondie. Go ahead. She glared at him and he just crossed his arms behind his head with a yawn. My name is Ino Yamanaka. I'm good with taijutsu and ninjutsu. I struggle with dealing with big babies. A pointed glance at Hinata who bristled in turn. Excellent. Great. My dream is to be married to a strong shinobi like, say, Sasuke Uchiha. Oh dear. Well, surely it couldn't get any worse from. My name is Sakura Haruno. I excel in all aspects of our academy training. I have some of the highest marks in class. I am weak in terms of experience, but I'm sure with you as our sensei, you'll understand that. And my dream, she giggled and blushed and went no further in explaining herself. His eye twitched. Why would I understand having no experience, Genin Haruno? She paused and the other two girls glanced at him warily. That is sensei that you're our age, so you're probably a new Jonin. Right. And we're your first assignment. Interesting. Your turn, he said, glancing at Hinata. The girl took a steadying breath and straightened her back. Come on, Sai. Give me at least someone I can work with on this team. Genin Hinata Hyuga. I excel in taijutsu, ninjutsu, and precise chakra control. I struggle in prolonged engagements and emotional repression. My dream is to be the strongest kunoichi I can be. The other two girls gaped at their third teammate and Naruto couldn't help a small smirk. Interesting. Very interesting. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, Jonin of 6 years. I excel in nearly all aspects of being a shinobi. I struggle dealing with those that don't take their training or their allies seriously. I dream of being Hokage and protecting every single person that calls this village their home. So far, I find you three disappointing. He cut them off before they could snap anything at him. We'll have our first survival training tomorrow morning. Meet at training ground 7. Don't be late or eat breakfast, or you might puke. Sounds good. Training. But we've already had survival training multiple times in the academy. Sakura cried out. Ino nodded along beside her while Hinata just sat quietly and listened. This is to see if you can survive being Genin. It may shock you to hear, but out of the 27 Genin that graduated, only 9 will continue forward to be Shinobi of the Leaf. He smiled at the blatant panic on all 3 of their faces. Oh man, Kakashi was right, it was enjoyable to grill them while he could. He'd remember their faces just now for years to come. Get some sleep and gather your supplies. Tomorrow we'll see if you have what it takes to be a Genin on my team. Good luck. He leapt off the roof faster than any of the girls could follow and headed off to his apartment. Kabuto had told him he'd leave all the pertinent reports on his desk now that he was officially off duty as Agent Konoha. It'd take him all night to get through those reports. Probably leave him barely enough time to shower and eat before his new team's training began. Well, let's just hope it goes well. That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it, then like, share and subscribe for the next video, as it's going to be more interesting, and also check out my other playlists. Hope you would like them too.